G'day everyone, so today we have a follow-up video for a video I made a while ago, which was how to take the JSON file of your location, your Google location history that you get from Google's Takeout. And when you get that file, as I sort of showed in the previous video, you don't get a huge amount of attributes in there. One thing you do get though is the timestamp, which is down to the second, which shows the exact moment at which Google recorded, or your phone recorded the when you were at that particular point. And so what that allows you to do, and what we'll be, I guess, exploring in this video, is how you can use, you'll have to bear with me here, there's a lot of points, so that's why it's a little bit laggy. How you can use, how you can take that date stamp feature and create a sort of an animation of where you've been. So let me see if I can give you a demo. So to get to the temporal controller, by the way, you go View, Panels, and then Temporal Controller, but it won't do anything unless you've set up temporal filtering, which we'll look at in a second. But before we do that, I just want to give a quick animation of exactly what's going on here. There we go. Okay, so you see all these little dots appearing. This is a sort of an animation of my history going along, animation of my location history on this particular street here. So I set the frames per second a moment ago to 30 frames per second for the animation, and each frame lasts for 5 days is what I've set here in the temporal controller. So when I hit play, it goes through. You can see the current frame is 2021 March 14th. And you can see when I hit play, you can see all these dots appearing and sort of fading away as we go through time. So that's what we're doing with this video, is we're making an animation of basically where your location history is or has been. So the way we're going to do this is by going into Properties for Location History, and then down the bottom, something I really haven't had much of a play with before but just recently been learning, is this here. So Temporal, Dynamic Temporal Control. And the configuration that I've gone with is a single field which contains the date and time, and then you've got the timestamp is the attribute in the location history which you want to use for animating this, and then the event duration is 2 years. So you'll notice a moment ago when I played the animation, the dot appeared as red and then it sort of faded away into white and then transparent. That happened over the course of 2 years. That's what I've set up in here, and depending on what you're going for, you might want to change this value to something else, but I'll give you a little demo. I'm just going to bring up a little video here. I'll give you a demo of what it looks like when you set, in this instance, the event duration to 2 years. So this is a little video here that I made of my location history over the course of 9 years. So if you look at the way that the dots are fading, so they first appear and then fade from red to orange and then to white and then completely disappear. That fading happens over the course of 2 years within the animation. That's the final product of what you can make, by the way, what we just saw just then. And so that's why I've set this to 2 years, because that seemed like an appropriate value. So that causes the events to appear or not appear when you move this temporal controller slider thing along. So let's take a given point here in time, which is November in 2019. So what will be displayed is any point which occurred on the 25th of November 2019, all the way back to 2 years before this, which would have been 2017 in November. So that's what gets displayed by this temporal controller. So that sort of shows you how to make points appear and disappear, but in terms of the fading in and out of the points, that's when it starts to get a little bit more complicated, and there's room for creativity. So I'll start off nice and simple. If you what I've done is I've made the size decrease slowly over the duration of the 2 years within the animation. And the way I've done so is with this formula here. So you might want to copy this for your own use or set it up in the way you want to set it up. And so how this works is the timestamp, which is the attribute in the location history file, and map start time is kind of confusing. Map start time is actually the current time within the temporal controller. This is where I get a little bit confused, but I interpret this as meaning map current time. You notice that T is sort of within a range. It says here from the 25th through to the 30th, which is, I guess, related to the fact that I had it in steps of 5 days. But anyway, just interpret this as meaning current time within the temporal slider. So let's just ignore these last few numbers here. Let's just have a look at what we've got here. We've got 3 plus the year, or a year, like the year amount of the difference between the attribute and the current point in time. And effectively what's going to happen here is on the exact time that the point appears within the temporal slider, the map current time will be equal to the time stamp. So what you're going to have in this formula is a date and time minus the same date and time, which yields 0, right? Something minus itself is 0. So what you get is 3 plus 0. And so 3 plus 0 is obviously 3, so that gives a point size of 3. Now, once the time slider advances further along, the map start time will increase. So let's just say that for a given timestamp, let's just say it was 2017, and then the temporal slider went along to 2018. So what you'd get is year of 2018 minus 2017. No, sorry, 2017 minus 2018. So 2017 minus 2018 in terms of years is -1. So you get 3 plus -1, and 3 plus -1 is 2. So what that means is that the size of the point decreases from 3 down to 2 over the course of a year, which is what we're trying to create in this animation, is that the point appears initially big, and then like it slowly decreases in size, and then fades, we'll look at fading soon, slowly fades over time. So that's what we're creating here. Just FYI, this to the power of 3 divided by 15 thing, this to the power of 3 is to make it so that the point like pops in size right at the start and then quickly decreases, but then doesn't decrease as much over time. I'll do like a little paint demonstration just to sort of get across what I'm doing. You don't have to do this, but I just decided to make it have this sort of animation. So let's say excuse my drawing skills, they're not the best. Let's just say you've got point size, and then you've got time here. Again, excuse my drawing skills. So we've got 0 here, and then over here we've got 2 years. That is an R, trust me. What's going to happen is, okay, let's say this is a size of 3, by the way. What's going to happen is that power of 3 is going to mean that instead of going from size 3 down to size 1 over the course of those 2 years, it kind of goes a little something like this. That's what the power of 3 does. So it means that the point really pops and is really big in size at the start, and then it quickly decreases before sort of decreasing not as much over the remainder of the time before we finally get to the 2 years, which is the end of the point appearing, then it disappears. That's effectively what I'm doing with the power of 3 there, but you don't have to do that. The main point here is that you're using timestamp minus date stamp time, you're using a size plus that. So that's going to be the size of the point. For the opacity, let's just check what I've done here. it's I did this formula thing a while ago, so I'm not too sure fully what's going on here. I believe, okay, so I think what's going on here is similar to this point size thing. We're starting off with an opacity of 100%, and then over the course of some amount of days, the amount of days divided by 7.3, I'm guessing what this means is that over the course of the 2 years, the opacity will decrease from 100 down to 0. So it starts off at 100, and then over those 2 years, it decreases down to 0. Let's just see if we can see that happening in one of the points, by the way. So I've got here, let's look at this point here right in front of this boat. You can see as we're going through time, you can see the point decrease in size over time and also decrease in opacity. I believe it sort of gets more invisible, though it's kind of hard to distinguish between what is a change in size and what is a change in opacity, but I believe the change in opacity is there. So yep, that's that. And then the final thing that I put in was also a change in color. Now this is where we get into something that I haven't done a lot of before. So if you go to the marker and then the fill color and then go assistant, and for some reason it takes a little bit of time for this to appear. If you go into assistant, you can then put in a formula for the color of the point. Now this is effectively an alternative to, let me just close this off really quickly, graduated symbology. You see, in graduated symbology, you've got like classes where it's not continuous, right? You've got like, say, 10 classes and each class has its own particular color. It's not continuous like it is in, when you're coloring a raster. But you can make a continuous color scheme for a vector layer by using this little assistant thing. And what you'll notice is that I've got a similar formula to what we saw before for the size, but what it's effectively doing is using this year timestamp map start time to sort of go from 2 through to 0. Just pretend this goes through to 0. And so what it means is that when the point officially or first appears, it has a value within this formula of 2, and that's when the point is red. And then slowly over time, it will decrease in redness and become whiter and whiter and whiter until it's completely white at the end of those 2 years. And so that's what we're effectively seeing. If we zoom in again to our little our point in front of the boat, what we're effectively seeing there as the point disappears is we've got a change in size, we've got a change in opacity, and we've also got a change in color for that point. And then finally, just to make things even more complicated and confusing, I also put in the same sort of assistant slider for the stroke color, which is the outline for the point. I made that change over time so that initially it starts off with a black outline around it, and then that black outline disappears. So that's pretty much that. That's how you set up the animation so that over time those points appear. As you can see, as I go back and forth across the time slider, the points appear and then sort of fade away in size and color. And as we saw just a moment ago in the video, I'll just play this again really quick so you can look at the result of this. What you create is something that looks a little something like this, where you can see your location shooting all over the place, depending on how far and wide you happen to travel. So now we get into, now that we know how to create this sort of point appearing, point animation thing, how to actually record it. And if I zoom out all the way back out to the side, to the state level, and if you wait for these points to appear, look at this loading thing down here. It's slowly populating and then populating, then populating. Still not done. Still going. There, it's done. Okay, so I've got so many points. I don't know about your location history, but I've got so many points in mine that it took more than, I think it's more than 10 seconds to appear. So in order to start animating this automatically, rather than just sliding this along, I chose to set my frame rate when I was recording the video to 0.05 frames per second. That's effectively 1 frame per 20 seconds. So if we close that off now, and let's just start playing. So we're playing from April 2020. Let's just hit play and see what happens. So all the points take a while to render because there are so many hundreds of thousands. And then I believe the temporal controller just went forward. It might have got a bit of a head start here, so let's wait for it to go again. So it started drawing all the points, and in a second it's going to go forward 5 days. There it is. Okay, so 20 seconds, or a frame rate of 0.05 frames per second, is just enough time for the points to fully render within this screen, and then for it to jump ahead 5 days and play the next frame. There it is, it just jumped ahead another 5 days. And so what you need to do is use a program like OBS to record your screen, and then you'll need to use a video editing program to get 1 frame per 20 seconds. In this instance, I took 1 frame per 20 seconds, and I left this going for, it would have been multiple hours. It would have been like 4 hours this was sitting here to get through the full 9 years, something like that. I can't quite remember. And once I got through the full 9 years, yeah, obviously, then I got the whole recording, got 1 frame for every 20 seconds, and then put that into a video that was 30 frames per second, and that's how we got to this video that we see here. So that's pretty much it. By the way, if you are wanting to speed this up, my recommendation is, or at least the way that I do it, is with a program called Sony Vegas, and you can put the video into Sony Vegas, set the frame rate to 0.05 frames per second in this instance, and then put a project into a project as a nested project and start ramping things up in speed. That's the way I did it. If that isn't very helpful the way I just described it, just leave a comment and I can probably explain to you what I did in Vegas. The reason this video is called Phase 4 is because I had a project in a project in a project in a project. It was like 4 levels of nested Sony Vegas projects to create this video in order to speed it up from 9 hours to like 15 seconds. So that's what happened there. So that's the location history. If you have any questions about that, yeah, like I said, just leave a comment down below. What I was wanting to jump into now is that this temporal controller is pretty cool in that you can use it for more than just timestamps. So, okay, so I do have some other examples of how you can use temporal filtering for showing animations of things, but I just before I get onto that, I just thought I'd quickly mention, just with this point size thing, this is something I got so confused about and finally realized and understood. For some reason, when QGIS receives a negative point size value, right, so this is point size here, this axis, receives a negative point size value, it interprets it as a positive value. So it effectively becomes like a y is equal to the absolute value of x kind of a graph, in that the point size, if you're using a formula, when it goes negative, QGIS interprets it as positive. And so when you end up with negative point size numbers, they become positive, and it draws huge points when they're not meant to exist. Just be careful of that. You want to make sure that when your point size is going down, it doesn't cross the x-axis until beyond the point at which the point disappears because of the length of time you've given it. So anyway, just a quick little point there I thought I should mention. Anyway, so what we're getting onto now is other instances of where you can use temporal filtering. Now what I've done in this instance here is I have a point cloud. It's a LiDAR point cloud. And what I've created is an attribute which is a date. It's not a real date. I'm wondering if it's going to let me look at the attribute table for this one. What I've done is I've taken the height of the points in the point cloud above the ground, and turned that height value into a date in years. So let's just see if I can show you what that looks like. Height, date. Yeah, here we go. So for example, where the point is 4... Yeah, okay. It is a bit confusing, but just roll with me here. Where the point is 50.9 meters above the ground, I've set the date to the year 509, right? So 50.9, 509. Each year is equal to, I think it's called a decimeter. Decimeter is 10 centimeters. So with this temporal slider here, you can see the points appearing in the point cloud, and each year within the temporal controller is 1 decimeter within the height of this point cloud. Now, because it takes a long time to render each frame in this, I'll bring in a little video which shows this once you've fully sort of animated and rendered it out. So I'll just start again. It's starting at the height of, I think, 60 meters, and then making its way down through the point cloud. So you can see the tallest trees appearing, and then it's going down through the lower parts of the trees, then eventually all the ground appears, and then nothing, because it goes beneath the ground. So that's what you can do using the temporal controller to move through something that is technically not time, it's height. It's becoming a temporal controller to move through height in the point cloud. So now to confuse it even harder, I've also taken that point cloud and transposed it so that up is north and north is up. So effectively we have a side-on view of the point cloud, and then I've set in the date, I've made a fake date. Instead of out of the height of the point above the ground, I've made a fake date out of the northing of the point. And so if you see me move this temporal controller, it sort of moves its way through the point cloud. Again, very slow to render and watch in QGIS, but if I play this little video, which I've made out of this, you'll see we're starting off at the lowest northing, I believe, and we're moving, I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but we're moving sideways through the point cloud, and you can see as we're moving, we're going past all the trees. It's kind of like a very primitive fly-through of a point cloud. And obviously you can see each tree appearing and disappearing, using the same sort of logic as before, with a point appearing and then sort of slowly fading in color and size and opacity. So that's the type of animation that you can make with that. So, I mean, those are just some examples of how I've been able to use the temporal controller to make some cool animations. And to be honest, I think the best one was definitely the location history animated. But if you guys have any other thoughts on like what you could use this temporal controller for, and what sort of cool things you can make with it, then definitely leave a comment, leave your thoughts on some cool things you could do with this. So anyway, yeah, like I said, leave some comments on if you need any help with this, and yep, good luck.